Today, told for the first time, a Welsh copper is left unconscious in the middle of the road.
He started swinging punches. One of them connected with my eye socket. I'm in the middle of a dark, busy road with cars coming towards me.
And an officer in North Yorkshire has his leg broken during a late-night arrest.
Get people here now.
He pulls me over. As soon as I went down, I just felt my leg go.
Let's go.
It felt snapped.
Need assistance.
The pain itself was just all-consuming.
Get up.
Policing in England and Wales in the 21st century is a complex job.
Off, you little.
He's abandoned the vehicle. We need units here as soon as, please.
But the government have pledged to offer our police forces more help.
The public ring the police 24/7. There is very little, if not no downtime at all. If I compare 1991 as a constable and compare the demands on me as an individual and the expectation, and now in the year 2020, hugely different, both in terms of pace, in terms of variety, in terms of complexity, and also in terms of the numbers of officers and staff.
There's so much that can be done to protect officers. First and foremost, we need more officers. We've been promised 20,000 more police officers by the government, which is great, but it doesn't quite fill the gap of what we've lost over the last 10 years.
I've got 500 more police officers today than I did at the worst time of the cuts. And we had to work very hard then about priorities because we couldn't do everything. And we still can't do everything. So the thin blue line is a little fatter, it's a little bit healthier. We can feel the difference now on the street. So we've been through the really tough times. And my officers and staff did brilliantly then, but we've got some exciting times ahead, I hope.
Last year, over 21,000 children were cautioned or sentenced, a 19% drop on 2018. However, reoffending rates for children or young adults remains higher than 10 years ago.
Dealing with young people is really difficult, especially when they're violent. An officer will deal with the threat. So that could be a 14-year-old kid, whether it's a lad or a girl, but if they're presenting such levels of violence that they need to be treated as an adult, then they should be. But it is difficult. It's a difficult dimension, and the media, the broader media, don't always help because they will paint an image of an innocent young child being manhandled by police, whereas in reality, that innocent young child is capable of doing some serious harm.
We try and work really closely with young people, and for young I mean under 10, trying to influence and guide at a really young age. There's no point when we get 14, 15, 16, because, you know, to a degree, people's mindsets and the influences that they're subject to are already in place by then. And they might be in families where, you know, authority is not seen as with any degree of respect.
Colwyn Bay is a lovely town. There's a lot of affluent people in Colwyn Bay. And the town centre's growing massively since the investment down on the promenade. It's a lovely place, and it's a very small element that causes problems. But those problems that they cause are quite significant. I've been a police officer 18 years. And my role is I still think of it as a good old-fashioned copper, being out there and being seen. Policing has changed significantly over the years. It used to be, ironically, more violent when I joined 18 years ago. And then we went through a period where it was relatively calm. Around here, we work in a very nice place. But that's changing again. It's getting a lot more violent again. And particularly the younger element are just not afraid of standing up to police. They are a lot more challenging of authority, far worse than I've ever experienced. Mainly, it's drink-related and drug-related. There's quite a drug problem with the youngsters. And it makes them so they don't have the same rationale and the same rational thinking that potentially they would have if they weren't on those drink and drugs. Clynos and I, we crewed up a lot. She was my probationer, so I was a tutor. We liked working with each other. We know how each other work. And it just so happened on that night, the sergeant put us out together.
Brad's police colleague Clynos is still not ready to talk about the events of that night.
We'd had a very busy night. Because there was no staff in Llandudno at that time, we were called over to a domestic incident, which was our priority. As we were driving through Colwyn Bay on Blues and Twos, a member of the public jumped out in front of the van, literally, and told us that there was a fight going on and that we needed to go and break it up. It was literally next to us. We went round the corner, and our intention was to break it up, let them disappear, and then carry on to go to the domestic incident. We drove into this car park, which is known locally as Ivy Street Car Park. There's a little alleyway up in front, and I could see a group of kids just up there, just standing around. So Clynos and I drove round into the car park to see what was going on, mainly because of the report we'd had. And when we turned this corner, we saw a large group of kids. And they weren't really doing much, but they were clearly in some kind of heated debate with each other. We had the blue lights going, the sirens were going, and our intention was what normally happens when they see the blue lights and the tones, they run away. But they didn't run away on that night. They decided to approach the van with a lot of hostility. So we decided to get out of the vehicle, to tell them to move, to get them just to disperse so that we could get to where we were going, to the domestic incident. We were simply asking them to go away, quite forcibly in times, telling them to go away, to break it up, break up the group and disappear. We tried to push them onto the main road so we were more visible to the cameras, whilst asking for more officers to come down and just give us a hand to disperse them. Initially, there was a group of about 5 or 6 of them, but that kept growing. I think it ended up being about 15 to 20. We're now surrounded by a group of teenagers who are drunk and some of them high on drugs as well. It got a lot more hostile, with them putting camera phones right in our faces with the torches on, which is a horrible feeling because you cannot see what's coming at you. The phones were literally touching our faces. It was at that point I realised we could be in a lot of trouble here, because I didn't know how far away my colleagues were.
It was the early hours in the morning, and we was doing a search for premises when we become aware of some trouble in Colwyn Bay town centre. Due to the nature of the task we were on, we couldn't actually leave at that time. You do want to go, but because of the legislation you're doing it under, the search needed completing. You can only enter the property once.
We managed to move them back. One of the ringleaders, he was the one that was aiming the most aggression. The others were shouting at us and swearing at us, but he looked a little bit older than the others. I decided that he'd overstepped the mark and I arrested him.
You want to go and help your colleagues, but you've also got to remember what you're doing as well. Thankfully, there was a lot of officers that responded.
My colleagues, because they were only down the road, they were all there pretty quickly, a couple of minutes. My intention was remove him from the group, and hopefully, if we remove that one person, the others then decide to disperse. Me and another colleague took him from Woodlands Road back across Abergele Road to the van. He changed. As soon as we took hold of him, he changed. He was apologetic, he was crying, he was getting upset. So I thought we'll put him in the van, which was still parked across the road. And I drove the van back round to where the rest of the officers were. I still had a domestic that I had to go to in Llandudno, which to me is a priority over some kids being antisocial. So my intention was to get this guy's details and take him home, drop him off at home, and I could deal with him again when he wasn't intoxicated. The group dispersed. All the officers went back about their normal business, leaving Llynnos and I there again. And he'd calmed down. He was protesting from the back of the van that he wouldn't cause any trouble. And I told him that I was taking him home. All I needed off him was an address. He initially gave me an address, but it was literally within the town centre. It was in a 2-second walk of where we were, and I explained to him that that wasn't a suitable address because I believed he'd come straight back out. He gave me another address, but I needed to check that that address was one that I could take him to. As I was talking to him in order to get that address from him, he started to get very aggressive again, very argumentative and hostile. So I closed the custody door again because I didn't want him to get excitable. He did appear through the door to have calmed down. I opened it up and said, "Give me that address so we can take you home." And at that point, he's exploded out of the van. I'd taken hold of him and a scuffle started. And he started swinging punches. One of them connected with my eye socket. And it floored me. And I was unconscious then. I was unconscious for 90 seconds approximately. I'm in the middle of quite a dark, busy road with cars coming towards me. Thankfully, Llynnos was there. She's taken hold of the defendant just as he's taken a swing with his foot towards my head, and she stopped that from happening. And then she's been punched to the face, flung around and assaulted, punched to the hand and arm numerous times. It's quite horrific. He managed to get away from Llynnos purely because he slips his jacket off. Even though Llynnos had been attacked, she carried on running after him. I believe it was when I was on the floor, Llynnos pressed her red 1 button, as we call it, to get help, to get urgent help, while she was being flung around. As soon as you hear that tone, everything stops. Because it doesn't get pressed very often. People don't just press it because they want to talk on the radio. They press it because they need help now. Once the red 1 was pressed, there was officers there very quickly. But it wasn't until some time later that I kind of realised what was going on.
The search was finished in Colwyn Bay when the activation went off. You could just hear shouting in the background. I think I could hear Llynnos's voice. And it was then we heard the CCTV operator inform the control room that there was an officer lay on the floor. So we headed along Abergele Road. And as we come over the brow of the hill, I've seen our sergeant, and he was pointing down one of the side streets. And so I've immediately turned the car down the side street, and on there's a back alleyway. And as I've looked up the alleyway, there was a male person running. Myself and my colleague have run down the alleyway. When we got in the car park, there was nobody to be seen. And then as I've been coming through the car park, I heard a noise under a car which has drawn my attention. And then I've immediately seen the male that I'd seen running up the alleyway underneath the car. I then drew my taser and started shouting instructions to the male to get out from underneath the car, telling him that he did have a red dot on his chest. He eventually rolled out and other officers joined and we were able to get him handcuffed. And then I arrested him for the 2 assaults on the police. I made my way to the scene where Brad and Llynnos were still awaiting transport to hospital.
It was a horrible feeling. I was totally bemused about what had happened, to be honest. Because the last I remember, I was taking somebody home, and then I'm waking up, properly waking up in hospital, with Llynnos next to me, who could hardly move, and she was black and blue. My injuries were quite light in comparison. I had a severely swollen eye socket. It was badly bruised. It looked really bad. And the concussion was the worst thing. They suspected that I had a fracture, but luckily I didn't. On the night, people thought that my injury was worse, but by no way was it, which gets me quite emotional now because as a result of what's happened, you know, Llynnos has got a serious injury. She still can't use her dominant hand, her right hand, because of the significant damage that's been caused by him to her. She can't drive, she can't grip anything, and ultimately, her career's in the balance because of him. Because of Llynnos's injury, and we were waiting for medical reports, it seemed to take an eternity for him to be charged. He eventually was charged with a Section 47 assault on myself, and what we call a Section 20 wounding on Llynnos. Quite rightly, he was charged with a more significant assault on Llynnos than myself. In 18 years, this is by far the worst assault that I've ever had personally. And it's also the worst injury that I've seen to an officer in terms of longevity of injury. Because what's it been now, 9 months, 10 months since it happened, and Llynnos is still no better. She's no further on. And potentially she's got a long, long road of recovery. And that shouldn't happen. Llynnos is still suffering. He's not getting any additional penalty for what he's done to Llynnos or I. I'm still very angry. I'm still quite emotional about it. The public need us to be strong. It would have been nice if the court system would have backed us up, to make it as if a justification for us doing what we do. Because at the moment, we don't feel like there is much justification for going out there and getting hurt.
The crime survey of 2019 estimated that there were over 1.3 million incidents of violence in England and Wales.
I'm just scared of criminals.
Do you want to come in for a cup of tea?
Oh my God. What's he doing?
During this time, there has also been a rise in attacks on officers.
I don't have the answer as to why violence is increased on the level that it has. I think it's a society issue, but also I think the lack of a deterrent is certainly a big part of it. You know, far too often I see officers or members of police staff who've been badly assaulted, and the offender, you know, in a courtroom puts on their suit, they have a solicitor who's saying how much of a hard life they've had, and they walk away from court with nothing more than a smack on the wrist.
Twitching window movement. Armed police! Armed police! Put your hands up to the window now!
The changing element of certain criminals is another reason for violence towards my officers. And you can see that here in Kent and indeed nationally. Some of those very organised, very violent criminals think nothing at all about injuring an officer to carry out criminality or indeed escape and evade arrest.
Shots fired! Get back!
I know that we have really strong public support around dealing with people who assault emergency workers to ensure that the criminal justice system actually imposes the most severest sanctions to make this unacceptable. Police officers and police staff join the service knowing the risks that they could end up being injured. They accept that risk as part of public service, particularly in relation to protecting life and running towards danger. But psychologically, when you are assaulted, it completely changes.
Assaults on police officers in 2019 increased to over 30,000 in England and Wales.
3 bar though, 3 bar urgent. Males in balaclavas. They've ran me and attacked me.
First and foremost, we can only deliver policing if we've got fit officers, both physically fit and psychologically fit. And I always describe policing as this is a marathon and not a sprint, and we need to be both of those, physically and psychologically fit to do the job. And in our personal lives, things ebb and flow, and in our professional lives. So we need to make sure that we support people throughout their careers.
Is there anything in this car now that you can get in trouble for at all? No. No drugs or that?
No.
Sure?
Yeah.
How far?
It's all... Get on the car. Get on the car. Get off of me! Get off the fucking car!
This financial year, I've had my officers assaulted 1,400 times, which is outrageous. In 2015, roughly about 460 officers were assaulted. Totally and utterly unacceptable.
$20,000 uplift that is being described in terms of coming into the police forces. Yes, it's going to make a difference. The additionality for us alone will be somewhere around an extra 300 officers. We need those officers, our communities need those officers, and it will enable us to give a better service to members of the public, undoubtedly.
My great passion is road safety. That's my core function, my core role every day when I come into work. I want to make sure that, you know, people aren't getting hurt, and unfortunately some people die on the roads, and, you know, we try our very best to prevent that. In the 11.5 years since I started as a probationary constable, the job has become far more difficult. Attitudes have changed. I go back to my childhood, you know, several decades ago now, and I look at now, and there's definitely a different attitude from the public. Authority figures, it's really fair to say, command a lot less respect. A lot of people nowadays are more than happy to challenge authority and go that extra step. It's a lovely county, North Yorkshire. It's so picturesque. It's a lovely place to work. It's the variety of the job. It wouldn't be uncommon for a shift at work during a day for me to cover 200 miles. Borough Bridge is a sort of a market town. It attracts tourists. It's got a nice little bit of history to it. But it's quite a small town, and it's quite quiet. Once the sun goes down, it becomes quite sleepy. The evening itself was nothing exceptional. There wasn't a great demand from me personally on the radio. Just after 11:30 at night, we get a call about an antisocial behaviour incident in Borough Bridge.
Traffic Officer Minto's police colleague has requested their identity is concealed for operational reasons.
So the call that came over the radio was that there was 2 youths running around a particular house with weapons, shouting abuse at the occupants inside. I was tutoring a student officer. We weren't far away, so we've said we'll go. My colleague Dave has shouted up on the radio and said that he would back us up.
I drive down the road and on the grass verge I see a couple of youths, pretty much as described. And there was a mention of weapons in the original call, a sledgehammer and a metal pole, and I get out my car and go over and speak to the youths, and I sat down. They get up when I go over.
Hello.
About a minute or two later, 2 of my colleagues arrive.
I think we'll search these lads in reception 1.
What are your names?
You've got 2 juveniles and it's midnight. I think my first concern is, what are you doing out?
Just stick your can of pop and stuff on there, mate, and your food.
We'll search him first. 2 lads were compliant and just talking to him. Obviously, we knew that there was weapons potentially involved, but from Dave's body language, it seemed it was all under control.
What's up? You got anything on?
Something's been going on.
Some weapons not too far away from them, and there were the weapons that had been described by the original caller.
The next minute, a car pulls up on the wrong side of the road, which was a bit strange.
You can see a female driver and a male front seat passenger, and I just asked them whether they want me to move my vehicle out the way so they can get past. At this point, the female gets out the car.
What's going on? Just turn around for me. What's going on?
What's going on with this stuff here?
On the grass verge, there was a metal bar and a sledgehammer.
It's a fairly hefty bit of equipment, that, isn't it? Long hammer.
It's not even mine, so...
While we're dealing with the 2 lads, the passenger got out, comes walking over, obviously drunk, shouting and swearing at us, telling us that, you know, what we're doing with these 2 lads.
Oh, yeah.
What are you terrorising him for?
Why are you swearing?
Just calm it down. Just calm it down, all right?
Well, what's he...
What's going on? You know what I mean?
This is your one warning, all right?
I try to start it quite low, reason with them, and just tell them to calm down.
One warning.
One warning I can do that.
One warning.
Yeah.
Give them every warning, and at that point, I decided I'm going to have to arrest him here for being drunk and disorderly in a public place.
Please leave him! Leave him!
We'll get off. My student was still with the two lads who were obviously getting a bit excited. The female was sort of getting in the way while I was trying to help Dave get hold of this male.
Stay away.
When I'm out of the vehicle, it just turns into a grapple.
I've tried to get hold of the man's arm, but he's a lot bigger than me, and he's managed to get hold of Dave's vest.
Get out of the car now.
I feel him put his foot over my ankle in the front of my foot, and at the same moment he pulls me over. The lower part of my leg just seemed to almost stay glued to the road surface, and as soon as I went down I just felt my leg go straight away. The pain itself was just all-consuming.
Dave's yelled out in pain.
Get off me! Get off him! Go here, listen! Go, man! I've done fuck up! Let's go!
Because this man was still being aggressive and he's started walking towards me, I've used my parva, sprayed it in his face.
Go here, please! Go!
He was walking back towards where Dave was on the floor, and I've shouted for assistance on the radio.
Need assistance, need assistance. Right.
Spray me! I've done fuck all!
Right, just calm yourself down.
If you push that button, it'll instantly send out an alarm.
I haven't drunk!
Get people here now.
I haven't fucking drunk! Get up!
Right.
You've basically got the airwave then, so your control room knows that you're going to need assistance.
Stand back, stand back.
No!
Everybody on the radio can hear what's going on, and hopefully they'll drop everything and come and help you.
Get out of the car now! Get out of the car now! I've done fuck all! Get out of the car now! Get off me!
Get off him! Need assistance, need assistance.
At that point, I still didn't really know what had happened, and I did actually shout up again.
I haven't drunk!
Get people here now.
I haven't fucking drunk!
Obviously, in that situation, there's a lot of noise. You can't always hear what's been said back to you on the radio.
Come on, just stand back, stand back.
So I've shouted again, saying, yeah, is there anyone coming?
Dave, you all right?
Let's fucking go!
Can you sit up there?
Heard Dave yell, was obviously in agony. It's not really Dave's style to be screaming and yelling on the floor.
Do you need an ambulance, Dave?
I knew straight away I'd done something quite serious to me ankle, and there was, if I'm honest with you, there was little I could do for a very short while.
You're not taking him up.
The danger for me and both my colleagues was people coming out the houses and in the street who were obviously wanting to get involved in some way.
I've done fuck all!
And the man, I hadn't handcuffed him at that point because I didn't want to get hands-on in case, he tried anything else. So I thought my best option was to contain him there and try and keep the other people away.
10 assistance call in Borough Bridge.
At that point, I did feel quite helpless. I just had to try and keep the man where he was until assistance arrived.
Done fuck all wrong!
Look, he's right.
I'm getting sprayed.
Yeah, he's just assaulted a PC. Right, you can...
bullshit!
I just tried to pull myself from the road onto the pavement, but my ankle it felt snapped. It was wobbling, and I knew it was a long-term injury straight away.
Come here. Broke my ankle. Right, can you sit? Just sit.
Waiting for assistance, it felt a very long time, but it was probably a matter of minutes.
Obviously 90 M6.
Spare me with serious
stay there.
Again,
Just
look.
stay there.
They've been pulled up, you know. They get pulled up.
Spare me with that shit again.
The first to arrive was Johnny. He works out of Knaresborough.
Johnny. He's an arrest by me for D&D. You know what's coming for assault police as well.
Do it.
He's just
Get
broken
up,
his
big
ankle.
cunt. I'll bust him up now.
My colleague has got out of his van and walked straight past me, actually, because he's obviously seen Dave on the floor. I've shouted to him, you need to come here.
Get out. Get out. You fucking do it now. Get out.
Right, you need to get out.
Get out of the car under arrest. Pushed it. Fucking pushed him, mate. Yeah, pushed it. The D&D. Arrested what? Please. Are you taking the piss?
We've handcuffed the male and then we've walked him to my van.
Fucking muppets.
And the man at that point basically saying that David assaulted him.
And he fucking grabbed me first. So I tripped him up, I punched him, I kicked him, and fuck all. But they are fucking bothered. Pick me up if I get out. I don't give a fuck. Let's fucking...
We've got him into the cage of the van and then my other colleagues come down and we could take him to custody. The two lads were compliant. It was all under control.
Yeah, no problem, we'll keep them all coming. Yeah, just confirm
You right, pal? Your ankle.
Pulled myself across to the pavement and we're just waiting to the ambulance, but we waited and we just thought, I'll get in the car. My colleague gave me to the hospital. I got there and immediately went for x-rays, which confirmed my immediate fears, which was I'd fractured my ankle, I'd fractured both my tibia and fibula. It was plated, it was pinned, and my understanding was that would stay in place for a minimum of 12 weeks. My in-laws, they were looking after my son, and they later visited hospital and brought him in, and, you know, because he's so young, he didn't know what was going on. He saw Daddy lying in a bed with a drip in his arm and with a plaster on his leg, and that wasn't the way that I was when I went to work the day before that. It was all very confusing to him. It was quite difficult to get a cuddle out of him. He didn't want to come very close, and yeah, it's all upsetting. I didn't return to work until January, so I was off work for really about 5 months. As well as a physical effect, the incident has a psychological effect. It does affect you mentally. You're left at home and you've got a lot of time and not a lot to do, and it's a lonely place, and yeah, it was a struggle. The early days were certainly a struggle.
You don't really go to work expecting that you're going to come back with that type of injury and miss out on a lot of things over the months, emotionally and sort of mentally. I think it will impact and has. You know, he's been off work for a long time.
I'm doing really well physically, back out running, slowly. And hopefully in the next few weeks, all being well, if I requalify in a lot of the things that I need to requalify in, I'll be back to front line and doing what I did prior to the 1st of August.